Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. Hey, welcome to the Re-Education of Schools podcast. I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton.
And we're just really excited to have you here as a part of the conversation, coming in, joining us. This is obviously the kind of the ground floor of us doing this podcast and being in this conversation, even with each other and with you. So we're really excited. I guess, Katie, what is this conversation going to be about? What are we doing?
We're going to really be looking at trauma-informed care within the educational system and things that are impacting classrooms. We're seeing this globally across our country and our own communities, how classrooms are changing, and then starting the conversation with all the new research that we're having and how our approach to children are going to look a little different. But I think it's all for the better. Yeah.
I think it's so important too. Like when we think about this kind of conversation and these topics, just thinking about how really there are only so many educators, I think, that are out there that have a good understanding of all of this, right? Yeah. Don't you think? I mean, like, isn't that been your experience? Like, it's still like early enough in this whole process of social emotional learning, trauma informed care, you name it, like that. There's not that many people that really feel like they're an expert in everything.
Yeah. I think it's bringing that whole community together of people with a little bit of information, and we're taking and stealing and borrowing and listening. And I think it's building that community is what we're hoping, and establish a community within this podcast of people that kind of have a good foundation for this work. And then I think what we're finding within our own education system is that we're not allotted, or districts aren't really sure how to provide the professional development in this area because it's so new, and that we're hoping this will at least offer like a 30-minute opportunity to talk about one of these topics in real life application. So whether you take it back to your team or your school community, or even like a little professional development group that you have or yourself, that we can kind of dive into this topic to give you one application thing to go work on in a real life context.
Yeah, like we don't want it to be overwhelming, right? Like sometimes you get into either you want to do a book study, or you want to you want to listen to some kind of podcast, or you want to listen to something that's an hour and a half long, or you want to go to this conference, and then it's like a real one-time kind of thing, or it feels like such a time commitment in a world where educators already don't feel like, and people in general just don't feel like we have a lot of time. And so to be able to provide something hopefully that is short enough but impactful enough that keeps the conversation going with you all, right? And with all the other educators that we're around. I think that's kind of the goal, and that's our hope.
Yeah, and what we're finding is like the continuous PD, because sometimes you get that one thing and it's like, here's all the information, and then it's never discussed again. So we're hoping this is like a continuous little microdose of things that I can go back to my classroom and try this part or implement this at my school, and keep on adding the layers, because it really is a layered approach. You just can't go in and like flip one day and say, now we're trauma informed.
Sure. Well, and I think both of us have experienced, right? And the people that we know that are kind of in our circles have experienced that. You go and you hear something, you go and you try it. And then chances are, 2, 3, 4 months later, even you go back and you reread, or you re-listen, or you rethink about what that was. And this, again, hopefully provides that opportunity where you can go back, listen to something quickly. You're going to be like, no, now I understand what they said in episode 3. Like, this is what makes sense. And, but, really it's 5 months out from that, because I think that's how it has to work. There's so much practice and so much, it's a lot of trial and error in figuring out how not just this works and the social emotional learning works with kids, or trauma impacts kids, or anything like that, but also how that works with you as an educator, right? With us as an educator, and how like our personalities fit in with that, because it's a little bit different, because we're all different people. That's also what makes this hard. That's why it makes it not a one-off PD kind of situation, which is what we're so used to in schools.
Yeah, there's no playbook. So we're not reading from a playbook. We're going from just collective of resources. It's a very gray area, and we're in the science of humans, right? So each scenario is so different for a lot of factors, and really processing through that and being reflective and responsive to within your own scenarios. And so many times you've read or researched something, and then I actually like, That's
Yeah.
I see it
There
in
it
how
is. Like, that's the thing.
there is the thing that we've talked about. I've now seen it through a kid's lens or experienced that with a family.
Yeah.
So hopefully the light bulb will go off and you'll come back and say, okay, I remember when we talked about that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't know stuff, you don't know to even be looking for
Yeah.
the stuff that you don't know
Yeah.
exists, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason for you to know. So you talked about we talked a little bit about like our, just how it's different for each person personally.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people to know a little bit just about us
Yeah.
personally, so that they have an understanding of
Yeah.
who are these people? Just two people off the street? Like what's going on that
Yeah.
these people are even people that we should listen to. So talk a little bit about kind of your background.
Yeah. Well, I've been in education. This is my 17th year. I started off as a young fives classroom teacher, and then I went and I was a classroom teacher for kids with autism and multiple disabilities for about 8 years. Then transitioned into a first grade general education teacher where I did an inclusion setting with some really tough kids. And then I became a special education coordinator, and now I'm a principal for a second through fifth grade building. Our school kind of specializes and houses 2 behavioral mental health programs and a low incident classroom in there. And we are just in year 2 of our trauma informed journey within our own school building.
Yeah. So a lot of I think we're learning a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like on the fly. Like in addition to, we're kind of in that spot where we've had a lot of training now. We're like learning a lot on the fly as far as like how that gets implemented and what that really looks like.
Yeah. And then
in a building.
Yeah. And within our building, we kind of met my first year coming in. And do you want to share a little bit about your background and how we got connected? And here we are.
I'd rather not.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Of course. So I always say I kind of backed my way into education.
Yeah.
I never really planned on. I'm not one of the people that was, as a 9-year-old was like, I'm going to be a teacher someday. Like it just wasn't me. And so as I went through college and everything, kind of was very lost, kind of just trying to feel my way through life. But as was the hot thing to do back then, I was just went to college anyway and got a degree anyway. So ended up just haphazardly finding my way into kind of a separate facility setting where I was a paraprofessional. I was an aide, and was just working with really tough kids from all over our general area, and found out that there was a whole like group of people that I had no idea existed.
Yeah.
From the time I was in school, I didn't know they existed. As an adult then, I didn't know that this population was there. And it was just a really tough population and kids that had really run into not fitting in a typical school setting. So went back and got my master's in special education and started teaching, and have been doing special ed, specifically kind of with like an emotionally disturbed kind of population, or really a lot of behavior kind of stuff, regardless of what kind of category it falls into, right? A lot of like tough behavior that doesn't necessarily fit into a typical classroom. So I've been doing that, and did that in a separate facility kind of situation for like 15 years when you add in like the years as a paraprofessional. And then just last year moved into the district where you're at and your building, and we kind of matched up, and just have been learning a lot. I've learned a lot about more of a general education setting, which is not my world for so long, and how all of this then, I've done a lot of thinking about how all of this and all of that, what I knew, translates to a general education population and a general education classroom where it's not the most extreme thing happening all the time. Because my world was the most extreme thing that's happening all the time, right? And now I've done a lot of thinking and learning about like, okay, so how does this work though for the thing that's just kind of hard or a little bit different or doesn't quite fit, but isn't necessarily just the most extreme. Yeah. So that's where I've come from, and kind of where we matched up ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, we both just kind of like nerd out about we've had a lot of training, and then the books, the research, the conference, checking out things. And so we kind of naturally started having those conversations. Yeah. So much so that we said, hey, we should just film a podcast. Because
what if we just recorded what we're saying right now?
Yeah. And we do a lot of professional development within our building and starting to do some more within our district. So just kind of connected up that way that we just more people to reach, right? And to go out and begin this work.
So we're excited. Again, hopefully you guys are excited. Hopefully that gives you some kind of idea of who we are and what this is going to be and what we're doing. this is not, don't read this, don't hear this as us being the end all experts
No, we'll
of
figure
everything.
it out.
But we are pretty committed to the idea that this is going to be a very real, honest, hopefully very accessible kind of conversation. Again, I just think that's really what we want it to be. Yeah. And we're super excited to have you guys join in it with us and to be here with us. We don't know what it's going to hold, and that's kind of what this work is. Yeah. And I think that's why it's exciting, and that's why it's fun, and that's why, we've continued to do it for so long.
Yep.
So we just thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you all. Now let's go out there and let's do the work. Yeah.